Welcome to The Teacher's Story. I'm Jackie Scully. This is a podcast to elevate teacher voice. In this program, you will hear teachers sharing their journey into this profession and their ideas for education. I'm kicking it off Teacher Appreciation Week, which starts May 2nd. This is about honest, vulnerable, inspiring storytelling. It's a time and a space for teachers to share their ideas for the future of education. Teachers are beautiful beings who give their heart and soul to their community. They're innovators, they're inspirational, not only to children, but to the people around them. And they deserve to share their voice. So welcome to The Teacher's Story. Enjoy. Hi, welcome to The Teacher's Story. I'm Jackie Scully, and today we have Hope Paterson with us. And I met Hope through some other colleagues on LinkedIn, Hope Blecker and also John Shabari, who've both been on this podcast. So we have quite our educator circle. And so I'm so excited to have Hope here today. Hope is a transformational coach and education innovation specialist. And she's going to share with us today about her network, Hope Sparks Network, and Hope Braintrust, which I've been learning about this past summer. And I have been part of sitting in and listening to some of the series, and it's been really enlightening. So thank you for being with us today.
It's my honor and pleasure. I've been looking forward to chatting with you, Jackie.
This is such a joy. I feel like every time we talk, we're so aligned with how we see education. So I think we're going to get into a wonderful conversation. So excited. My first question is usually like, what got you into education? And I know you have kind of a different path into where you're at now and like the work that you're building in this network. So just anything maybe from the beginning that inspired you to be in this kind of place in this community.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to dive in. I'm always fascinated by people's trajectories and their line through their life. And I realized that I've always loved learning by doing. In fact, that's what led me into entrepreneurship. I think as early as I could work, probably somewhere around 14, I could get a job, but I really enjoyed figuring out problems and also working with different people to make amazing things come together, like products or new services or building teams. And I spent much of my earlier adult life working on my own and others' businesses, startups in many sectors like food and nutrition and health and well-being, ag tech, ethical fashion. And when I had my own children, Jackie, early on, I started to become aware of how formative education was in how we move through life. I was watching my kids and really digging into what they were learning and thinking, it hasn't really changed since I was little. And I was also noting that in my entrepreneurial clients, I was noticing many of them, grown-ups, were getting stuck on conditioning or the way they saw themselves because of their education. And this really light bulb moment for me. And I started to dive into education more and more. I was fascinated by the innovation happening and also the idea of learning through doing. I started to see a lot more opportunities and examples of really amazing educators around the world exploring new ways to learn. So I have been focusing my work, my coaching, my networking in the education sector more and more, and it's super exciting.
Thank you. I love this like backstory because it's very different than the type of guests I've had on. And I like that you can have someone come into education in so many different ways and through your children and seeing how school was pretty much the same. And I've talked about this, that this, industrial model, factory model from the 20th century. We're in the 21st century. The tagline's always like 21st century learning. And in the traditional school model, it really isn't. You can't just have a smart board and some computers and apps and say it's 21st century learning, because it's not just about technology. Tech is a tool, but it's how we are, creating and innovating and using our mind in a new way. And so Can you tell us a little bit more about like what you've done with your children? So you've seen this, you've had this through line with looking at your kids in school. Then what did you kind of do as a parent to then say, we're going to do this a little differently before we go into some of the work you're doing now?
Sure. I really had to get my big girl pants on and not just talk about it, but actually do something. And when I started to see my daughter, who I think was about 4 or 5, experience serious anxiety in school, I was in the school setting and I think she was around a lot of dysregulated kids and through no fault of their own. And the school kind of schedule was just, it was not well suited to her very highly sensitive personality. My son, who was a bit younger, not the same. He just more exposure to lots of things going on worked for him. But I was like, the school system does not necessarily in the curriculum, but also in the environment and the scheduling and the stressors doesn't work for
Mm.
all kids. So I started to experiment, Jackie. I started to guinea pig with my kids and try different programs. We started a kids mindfulness program in Toronto for after school. That was really fascinating. And I started to sort of build this network of really beautiful educators, yoga teachers, mindfulness teachers to come in and help to infuse kids' lives with that kind of programming and support and regulation that they couldn't get at school and their parents didn't have time for. And this extended probably for a year. And I thought, okay, what about the big world out there? Let's try, perhaps trying on homeschooling or world schooling. I'd always wanted to travel with my kids. I know you like traveling a lot. And I thought, how would it be to take our kids on the road and try some of these new platforms that I'd been hearing about, like Khan Academy was just starting to kind of bubble to the surface, and there were math programs that were fun. And I thought, I can do this. I had
Mm.
taught, full disclosure, I'm not an educator, I'm not a teacher. I taught in Thailand and Laos in my 20s, but not my own kids. But I was supported by my husband. We really rested on our trust fund, which is a fund of trust, not a giant bank account at the time. We rented our home. We packed up all our belongings and took our 7 and 9-year-old kids on the road for the year with one plane ticket to Japan. And the rest was like wide open. And so we really had to dive in with a lot of bravery and show and embody for our kids that you can take chances. You can dive into uncertainty and unknown. And as long as you keep your values intact and you continue to be mindful of how it's working for everybody, and add a lot of creativity, anything really is possible. And we had an amazing year. The kids flourished. I think my son skipped 3 grades of the learning. We
Wow.
learned in all different settings, as you can imagine. And I think for the kids, they developed their own love of learning, different from each other because they're different characters. And we developed a really amazing bond as a family. After 1 year, we ended up saying, we can't put that genie back in the bottle. And so we didn't move back to Canada. We ended up moving to Bali. The kids had seen the green school on their year away and said, can we go to that school in the jungle? And we thought, if we can make it work, then, and you can get in, then we can do it. So we ended up in Bali for the year after that. So again, another big, brave leap, which has led to so much amazing connections and openings for our whole family.
Wow. What a journey. And going back to the green school, I had Kenny Peavy on the podcast in season, I think that was actually still season 1. And then my Germany trip I took with my students this past summer, the trip I was co-leading with my head of school, we had presenters at the conference, the summit in Berlin that also went to the green school. So there's so many
It's kind of
connections with that.
swirling hub of innovation around learning and
Yeah.
family travel,
Yeah.
all things amazing.
What I love about this is taking risks, but doing this with your family and knowing that we have, again, values and that we will take care of each other and we are going to continually learning. And it doesn't need to be a one size fits all system. And you can take something here, you could take something here, and you can, really enrich their learning experience. And you're looking at them as individual learners. Like learning needs to be individualized.
Mhm.
And again, you can't, and I feel for the teachers in the public school system. I mean, even in like, I'm in a traditional school system because you have 150 kids on your roster, you have 30 kids in front of you, and you're like, differentiation. Yeah, I'm going to try that, but it's really hard. But that's why we kind of need to break the mold a little bit of this traditional model because it doesn't suit actually a lot of kids. Like you talking about your daughter and how it didn't really work with the schedule and the stressors. Like honestly, I don't think that works for most people. It doesn't work for most teachers. It's getting more ramped up, more on your plate,
Yeah.
more micromanagement, and everyone's feeling like, especially after the pandemic, which is usually like my next part I get into, and having a little bit more space if when we were virtual to kind of play, innovate, even though we're just like on Zoom and everything. It felt like we had a little bit more freedom and space to just try things out. And now we're kind of like back in that vacuum again. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. And that's what we're trying to do in 2022, 2023, so forth. And it's like, it's not working. And that's why you do see people leaving. You see teachers leaving, you see families pulling their kids because they're like, this doesn't work for us anymore because we were able to travel and do things before when it was virtual school. And, we were able to just look at maybe other possibilities. So you have to take risks and look at what is best for each of your children. And it is teaching them something valuable that you can do this. It's a big world. You don't have to just think about this is my community school, go there for 12 years, just
Yeah.
do whatever the curriculum is that they tell me. And then there's a track to college or whatever that is. And it just keeps people in a very confined space. And so
Yeah.
you're doing
I
something really
couldn't
bold.
agree more. Your beautiful point about breaking the mold. It's scary to do. And I think I almost liken it to like a muscle that we need to exercise every once in a
Mm,
while. And believe you me, my husband and I literally had to push ourselves out of the nest. A lot of late night talks of like, are we ready? Can we do it? Is everything going to line up? Can we? And I think for kids to experience their parents when they're not in such a rat race, that was more important than any
mm,
homeschooling, than any experimentation of their learning, for them to see us more regulated, calmer, feeling ourselves, because that's what my husband and I came back to, was how do we embody or show that you can take risks, that you can follow your dreams, that you can do things differently and enjoy yourself. For us, that was the greatest learning. And I'm watching my kids now in teenagerhood,
mhm.
they've really taken that to heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you're back in Canada, what are your kids still? Are you homeschooling? Are they doing like another kind of alternative school kind of program or micro schools? There's so many different ways out there.
Yeah. Well, we've experimented with so many. They've had world schooling. They were in the jungle in green school. They were at a local public school elementary in Toronto. They were in a country school in Quebec. My daughter spent the last 2 years self-directed homeschooling, which was really amazing. Her grade 8 and grade 9. My son is still at the local public school. And what I love is seeing them like navigate all
Mm,
these different environments, and they're good with all of them because they're like,
yeah.
okay, I like learning. I like myself. I know myself. Now I'm in a different setting.
Mm,
What's this setting like? And I think that
hmm
is a life skill to be able to drop in so many different spaces. Some good teachers, some not so good teachers,
hmm
but that doesn't mean that it impacts how they feel about themselves.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Being able to adapt, but always go back to the core of who you are. And that's why I think it's really important for children to have that, whether it's between parenting and schooling or both, getting to know who you are and being comfortable in your own skin, because that's what you can carry through in so many different spaces. Because I see so many kids still struggling with self-esteem and confidence and thinking they have to get that from the teacher
Wow.
or from a grade, from an honors program or whatever that may be. But it's like, no, it comes internally. And those external factors, they're there. It's just like energy, right? But like you internally know who you are, know what your gifts are, and what you want to explore. I think that's beautiful that your children have been able to adapt in all of these settings. I think they're going to be change makers. And you're like molding change makers because they've seen so many different spaces. Not saying
Yeah.
they might go into education as a change maker, but they've seen that, and they're going to carry that with them into their adulthood as well. I could totally see
I
that.
hope so for them. I think they're willing to be different, but also remain part of a community. Community to me is so important, and they also get that kind of channeled in their environment. So I think it's great to be different and follow your path, and also be woven into a vibrant community you
Mm,
support or you interact with.
yes. So that kind of goes right into the Hope Brain Trust. And was this something that came out of maybe some of this, experience you've been having with your children and traveling and different schooling environments? Or was it something that came out of the pandemic? Because that's usually kind of my next part. But how did you birth all of this? Because it's beautiful what you've created.
Oh, thank you. Well, I would say when we landed from Bali rather abruptly, we had to literally jump on the last plane out, Jackie.
Oh,
And we were like, we're staying in Bali. We'd even organized this like whole kind of community on the island of Bali to like, we're staying here, we're not going home. And then all of a sudden our parents were like, you need to come home. So we hopped on the last flight, came back to Canada, and all four of us were like, huh? That's not what we were planning. And I got quickly to work to fill the gap of this amazing community and network I had been really kind of woven into in Bali. And in Bali is so global, I would say a global network of people innovating. I work with tons of entrepreneurs still as a coach and educators. So I thought, I'm in this rural town in Quebec. How am I going to feed my need to connect with people? So I started to reach out and interview tons of people who were exploring new ways for their kids to learn. And I started an interview series, which then shifted into, I was sitting on a gold mine of all this information and all these connections. I thought, you know what? I'm going to create a network where I'm going to pulse out like a beacon for parents and educators who feel like they're all alone. They don't know that there are other people taking chances or starting new businesses in education. Parents who are lost and they're like, this is not working, but I don't have the time to look and interview everyone. So I created Hope Sparks Network, which is free for parents and educators to join, full of resources, full of conversations. And it was so amazing to see all of these people from different sectors of education, academia, research, ed tech, school builders, micro school, psychologists, and learners come together and kind of break down their like camps and their silos to
mm,
start to communicate and learn and grow from each other. And so that Hope Sparks was the spark. And from there, I had an idea that maybe bringing people together in live events would yet be another layer of fulfilling my desire to connect the dots and connect people. So Hope Brain Trust started a year ago, and I bring people together each month. It started out once a month, and now it's like anywhere from 6 to 8 live learning events or collaboration, networking, get-togethers with people from literally around the world and all different ages. We have our
mm,
youngest are like 12, our eldest are in their 80s. And sometimes we have the youngest teaching the eldest
mm,
on topics like AI, future of learning, using the AI tools, emotional intelligence, how to support parents. Um, Sometimes people come on and really showcase their approach to
mm,
learning, math, literacy. And my kind of focus is creating a very engaging, warm, friendly, and interactive space. And I know you've been on one of them, so maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, I really loved being part of it. It was the one on quantum, was it quantum physics
And self-esteem.
and self-esteem and the inner like connectedness of all of that. And the presentation was so insightful, but then I loved the multiple breakout rooms and sharing with so many different people from around the world with so many different backgrounds and insights. And it left me with just, such an inspiration to just want to keep digging more into, finding all of those like interconnected pieces to different aspects, and not everything, like you said, is in like a silo. And this is just the beginning of the work I've been doing on my own journey, because I'm still in a very traditional school model, but I've started to explore more those alternative education spaces. Um, attended Arrow, which is the Alternative Education Resource Organization, did a presentation there. And now I've been connecting with individuals from that organization and then through the Brain Trust. And some of those speakers you've had on the Brain Trust will be on this podcast as well. So the web is growing, Hope. I love it.
It's like a living, breathing
It
organism. And
is.
that's what
It
I
really
find
is.
so cool is I'm learning and you're learning. It is, as a mentor of mine shares, we are playing the infinite game. And if you've studied Buckminster Fuller, who was very much focused on education and building and our world and our systems, he often talked about playing this infinite game where everybody wins. Everybody is playing a part in this larger system. And I think
Yeah.
going about our work, going about our impact and contribution in this way is like, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to put it. I mean, we're all in it together. And instead of having like hierarchy, where the people on the top are directing you, or the teacher or this position is mentoring you, that it's like this whole kind of circle cycle constantly moving around, swirling and growing, and that we're all gaining from one another. We're gaining and we're flourishing because we're in these spaces together.
Totally. And I have to say my favorite part of this brain trust at the moment is being taught by young people.
Yeah.
Whenever I have a chance to have a young person lead, so if you know of anyone or anybody listening to this podcast knows anyone, I want to have the young people be sitting at the table. If we're talking
Yes.
about future of learning, we need more young people
Yeah.
sharing their perspective, because it isn't the same as us who were brought up in the more conventional system where we were conditioned, even though we don't even think we were, we were.
Oh, yeah.
And we keep trying to do things differently, but I find it actually takes a young voice who's very direct and very confident to say, wait a minute, you're doing it again. Could you just do it differently? And this is how.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. Can you give an example of maybe a session or presentation that you had? I know you mentioned AI, and I would love to dive into that too, that there was a young person on to really lead maybe something that was a
Yeah.
engaging conversation. Yeah.
He's 12, and he and his father discovered that he knew a lot about AI, and his father is an entrepreneur. He runs several businesses, and he tag teamed with his son to create a business where the 12-year-old would go out and teach elders or adults how to access AI in an accessible, simple, clear
Mm,
way. He created a whole website. He created a whole kind of lesson plan. And I thought, okay, let's see how it is with lots of educators. Let's bring him on. And
yeah.
he was amazing, confident, clear. He went through the whole incredible presentation. And then the best part is the Q&A at the end, because he got questions like, what about cheating? Or what about like if children misuse this? And he's like, they will, if you don't trust them and find out. It's kind of like using technology or screens. If you don't know what they're using it for, you don't seek to understand what the tool is bringing to them, then they're going to misuse it and they're not going to care about your rules. They'll find their way around it.
Mm,
And the way he responded, a 12-year-old, like flabbergasted the educators because they couldn't argue with it. it was a perspective that like, you can see a group of educators around a table kind of going around in circles, being like, not a good idea, not a good idea. And he was like, hey, wait a minute. You can put these governors on, you can put these checks. He came up with ideas for them to like try and support the learners not to cheat. But he's like, at the end of the day, you have to trust young people and they'll feel it if you don't.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to let them just make mistakes. Like it's okay to try something out and then you're like, oh, maybe I did use too much of this, like, information from AI and I'm not using my own voice and it doesn't sound authentic. And how am I playing with it? Because you have to be able to explore and experiment and let them make mistakes and let them come to their own kind of reflection of, oh yeah, that didn't really work. Or maybe that's not how I want to use it, instead of saying, no, don't do that. Or no, you were cheating. And it's just it's just more about discipline than anything. So I love how this 12-year-old is giving this advice and this lesson to teachers, but talking in a very eloquent way and wanting them really to see, what it's like from a learner's point of view. So that's great. And we're just on the cutting edge of just like seeing what AI is. Our school has a policy where each department has to put it in their syllabus. And for me, like I told my students, like, you're going to use it and we're going to play with it, but I want to have us talk about like, how is it a tool and that can help you when you're brainstorming? And then how do you don't want to like lose your own integrity. You don't want to lose your own creative thought, right? So we have to be very discerning with how we use it. And that is part of the learning process. And we're doing it too as adults. I use it. I use AI. I mean, I'm in the creative space, creating a podcast and writing a book. And if I just need to like work out some language or start with some ideas because I got some words, I got some phrases and I'm thinking of something, and then like I play with it and I'm not just like, oh yeah, it gave me an idea. I didn't really think too much about it. I'm just going to plop it over here. Like I'm working as like a team player kind of with AI. I think it's like a really neat thing to do.
It's a good co-pilot. I've heard that. And I
A
like the
co-pilot.
co-pilot.
Yes.
And just to extend the Hope Brain Trust beyond my live events, I have been requested by a number of teachers or principals working in the system, the public system, and private schools, saying, hey, do you know anyone teaching courses on AI this year? And I got to admit, I am pushing the 12-year-old to come in and deliver that course. And a few people are like, whoa, we can't have a 12-year-old teach us. I'm like, why not?
Yeah.
Like it could be really, speaking of a co-pilot, if a teacher had a 12-year-old delivering to their students who are like 12, 13, 14, you better believe the students would learn much faster and the teacher could like kind of co-pilot with the 12-year-old delivering it and the AI. It would be incredible.
Oh, when your peer is teaching you something, like our students love it when they're up and they're doing more of a student-led discussion or something where they can bring whatever they created and engage the class, that they're like listening to their peer more so than the teacher. And the teacher there is to facilitate. I'm here. How do we manage space? How do we maybe help organize groups and how we're going to lead this kind of discussion? But like you can bring in your intellect, your creativity, your ideas, your perspective. And I'm like kind of co-creating with you on how to like use this space, because that's kind of maybe my expertise and I'm learning from you as well. Like I think education definitely needs to be about co-creation, and the learner and like the facilitator kind of like changing up language from teacher student is really kind of bringing something to life together.
Yeah. In an ideal world, and I know you're doing that, which is really a blessing to have people like you. When you were on the last Brain Trust, I had a few people chat after saying, why wasn't she my teacher?
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I try what I'm able to do, but I still am in a system where there's curriculum, there's rubrics, there's, things I have to follow. But I try to shake it up as much as I can inside. Like
and
I would
love.
say,
I would say that you pour a whole lot of love and grace into the way you show up as a human. And I just want to reflect that back, because I think that
Thank
that is an
you.
ingredient that we need in more teachers, more humans, is feeling good about yourself and feeling comfortable and confident to like compliment and support other people openly.
Yeah.
And you do that.
Yeah.
I think
Thank
kids need that
you.
example.
Yeah. And knowing that we're all kind of just working our way through and trying to figure it out as we go along and support one another. I like the word you used, grace. That's been a huge word for just my journey since starting all of this, is that I think you can be a revolutionary and you can make change when you do it in a place of love and grace, because people might be more open to listen to your ideas or join you on your journey because they see it's coming from a place of real care and not just
Mm,
saying, hey, you're doing everything wrong and this is how it should be. So thank you for saying that.
yeah, my pleasure. I'm a bit of a diviner of really caring people. I seek them out and
You
want to care
do.
for people. Yeah.
Yes, you're connecting amazing people in the Brain Trust. Is there anything else you want to share about the Brain Trust looking forward? Anything else, any other ideas about your
Yeah,
ideas?
actually, I
Yeah.
do have a fun idea that I've been brewing, and I will be sharing more information in the Brain Trust Network and also on my social platforms. Is Zoom is fun and all, but not as good as in person. So I
Of course.
experimented last year in Bali and held an event. It was 5 days in different environments at school, in co-working, in people's villas. And we brought together over 100 people in each
Wow.
setting to um, talk about the future of learning and work and family, because they're pretty interconnected.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we had speakers who were young teenagers, and we had speakers who were adults, grown-ups. And so my plan for this coming year, it's likely going to be after January, is to put on several events, intergenerational sort of jam sessions where we get to shine a spotlight in person of what's possible. Because I think when we see examples, we see evidence, real proof that you
Yeah.
can live your family life differently, you can learn differently, you can work differently, with these amazing, inspiring people offering their stories and their, revealing how they got there, and perhaps some failures along the way to make it really real and vulnerable. I think that will spark more people to perhaps take some more leaps. So that's
Yeah.
coming down the pike, and I can't wait to see you in person at one of these.
Yes, I will love to attend. I think that's a wonderful idea. Having Zoom, having virtual kind of retreats, conferences, workshopping, it's great because then you can connect people from all over the world, especially if it's difficult financially to fly,
Yeah,
lodging, all of that. But having those spaces are really powerful. Everything I've done in person, like going to it was their first time going back in person to the Arrow conference. I did a spiritual retreat in person, and I've done them also, these types of workshops, like virtually. I mean, in person, you just leave with such an energy and it makes you want to go out and do something different. It really does. It lights a
yeah.
fire under you. So I can see that happening in 2024. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear
Let's
about
do
that.
it, Jackie.
Yes, we're going to do it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming
Oh,
on the Teacher Story. Would you like to share any contact information or how our listeners can find you? And I'll put that in the show notes.
sure. You can put in the show notes. Really, my website is the easiest, and it's Hope, Hope, Patterson with 1T.ca. And I have most of my information there. And the Hope Sparks Network is just hopesparksnetwork.com. Come join us.
Wonderful. Yes, come join Hope. You
Yeah.
are just such a light, such an inspiration, and you have this calm about you, this center and grounding. And whenever I'm talking with you, I just feel that energy too. And I don't know, you're a magnet. You're bringing people in, and they're all coming together. So something very
Oh, thank
special.
you. It's an
Yeah.
honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.